Are you listening now?
Hi, I'm Parisa. I am the founder of sustainability charity Greener and Cleaner, and for over 20 years before that, I was in legal and business affairs, mostly in media and entertainment, but starting off in human rights. As I mentioned, I started off in human rights. I ended up in media entertainment as a corporate lawyer, essentially, helping make TV shows in the end. And obviously, the student strikes and the school climate strikes of 2018 really struck home with me as I was at home on mat leave with my children. And I just looked around me and I was shocked and horrified to see 5-year-olds having to set aside their childhood in order to beg us adults to take responsibility and act on climate. And so I kind of didn't see anything happening, and I didn't want my kids held for ransom by political systems and profits. And so I kind of decided that at work I'd get more involved in sustainability, and then at home I would set up a community group, which then became this wonderful charity where local people share their tips and their advice and support each other to live more sustainably and at the same time save money, deal with their cost of living, live healthier lives, and sort of build a real community, which honestly was missing. It's super exciting. It's super exciting as a problem solver. It's super exciting as a mum to see things evolving, to see how the community group went from 20 people to a few thousand people to how we've got over 12,000 people coming through this community space now every year. That is amazing. In 2 days over the Christmas fair, we had 2,000 people. That is amazing. And if I can do it, anyone can do it. So that's what's really exciting. People coming together with an idea and making it happen. That means we can all do it in whatever areas we want. I think one of the biggest challenges is that people see sustainability in a kind of stereotyped way. They see it as something for wealthy, rich, people, a luxury, something if you've got time to do. What they don't realise is that climate change accounts for 50% of the increases in food costs since 2001. So we all know that hundreds of pounds of extra, money is being spent every year now on our food bills, but 50% of that is because of extremes of heat and cold, right? We all know that if you are dealing with poverty, you are more likely to be living in areas of the worst air pollution, both in the UK and the US. And on average, people of colour and people with health vulnerabilities are even more likely to be living in those areas. So it is something about the future, but we're not talking about polar bears. We're talking about the cost of living. We're talking about our lungs. We're talking about, people's lives day to day now. And we're not talking about its impacts on middle class people. We're talking about how it impacts everyone. And so we all have a responsibility to act, but we also all have an interest to act, because whatever your financial background, whatever your ethnic background, it does affect you now. What keeps me unstoppable is the fact that we have less and less time to deal with climate, and I have 2 gorgeous little children looking at me every day. They're not asking me about it, but I have a massive sense of responsibility. And I really feel that, unfortunately, our political system doesn't serve them because it's focused on winning votes every 4 years. Our business system doesn't support them because it's focused on profits mostly. And so if mums like me aren't acting to protect them, then who will? Because there's not money in it for people. So that's what keeps me unstoppable, is not only my own children, but all of the children out there that we have a responsibility towards, and that who often feel that they are alone and that the adults in the room aren't taking responsibility. That's what keeps me unstoppable. The thing that I would like to be truly unstoppable would be the transformation of the connection the British public, in fact the public around the world, but let's start with the British public, have with sustainability and climate. I want to see these community hubs, transition towns, climate hubs, repair cafes, community gardens all over the UK being successful, sustainable, and really engaging everyone from the community, because I want this transformation in culture, which means that suddenly everyone understands how it's relevant to them, to their health, to their families, to their pockets now, and to their futures, to their businesses, to their livelihoods, to their health. That's what I want to be truly unstoppable. That despite all of the difficulties in our ways, that everybody gets it and they know how to use their voices and their choices. because they're supported at a community level by these amazing community hubs and projects. I think electric vehicles are a really interesting conversation. I think a lot of people assume that when you talk about electric vehicles, you're talking about every single private vehicle changing into an electric vehicle. But actually, from my point of view as an environmentalist, I think electric vehicles have a place in terms of making our public transport much greener and more accessible, in terms of making car shares much greener, in terms of making our taxi services much greener, in terms of making our waste fleets and our business fleets much greener, because in a lot of situations you can't get rid of vehicles. You can't just go to car shares, you can't just go to walking and cycling. But ultimately, electric vehicles mean that when we are walking and cycling much more, which is what we need to aim for, when we are car sharing much more, which is what we need to aim for, our roads aren't as full of pollution, and generally the amount of carbon emissions that we are emitting is massively reduced. We're not burning fossil fuels anymore. We can't afford to continue burning fossil fuels at the same rate we are. And as long as the electric car industry keeps working on the circular nature of their batteries and their resources and, takes our thinking on board around waste reduction, then I think it's a really, really positive thing for it to expand. And when we talk about voices and choices, it's your choice to decide, can I walk, can I cycle, can I use public transport, or do I need to have a private vehicle for this journey? And then it's your voice that can tell your politicians, please help us make it cheaper for me to have a home charging point. Make it cheaper for public transport to use electric vehicles. Make it safer for people to walk and cycle. Put those crossings in near playgrounds, near schools, near shops. You'd think that that was basic common sense. But actually, we as individuals have to use our voices, because otherwise the only thing politicians hear is, we need more parking spaces. And that is utterly depressing. So basically, using our voices and our choices around electric vehicles is really important. And they are an important solution where you can't get away from using some kind of vehicle. And I think the transformation they can bring in terms of the carbon emissions and pollution from businesses and from councils in terms of their fleets is massive. And in terms of public transport is massive. And even in terms of individual car travel. Because I know that more and more people are realising private car travel is not the only solution, and it's one of many that needs to make the future we all need. I would say our community hub manager, Tamsin, is the most unstoppable, incredible woman you will ever meet, and you will never meet a kinder heart. She has gone above and beyond, putting in her hours, but many, many more hours, and constantly thinking of ways that we can make the community hub the best it can be. She makes sure it's open 5 days a week. She makes sure all the volunteers are cared for and happy. She makes sure we're reaching out to the community and all the charities and community groups representing marginalised communities. They've got to know her and me, and they really love her, as do I, and she is a constant inspiration.
Are you listening now?